In the cold hush between galaxies, where the stars whispered old songs and time bled slowly across the dark canvas of space, there drifted a being too large, too luminous, too different to be welcomed among her own kind. Her name was Vaela, though. No one had spoken it aloud in centuries. She was born of the mirror, an ancient species of immense biological scale, graceful and glowing with bioluminescent skin that shimmered like liquid stars. But Vaela's body had not stopped growing after her final metamorphosis. She had swollen to sizes that made planets seem like motes of dust. Her own people, whose slender forms could glide through gas giants and speak in ultraviolet sighs, had exiled her with a single word carved into silence: unfit. She could not bear children, they said. Her form, magnificent and monstrous, was an evolutionary error. She was not just alone. She was ashamed of them. She drifted at the edge of a collapsed nebula, watching it swirl in silence, and sang to herself in a voice that only the dead stars remembered. She had not spoken to another sentient being in 1,200 years. Then, a sound. Not a song, not a whisper, but the jarring bark of artificial engines, a metal echo tearing through her silence. A ship, tiny, a dot made of alloys and fire. She didn't believe it at first. Surely nothing would dare fly this far into the black, but the ship was real, and it was broken. Its hull flared with leaks. Its distress beacon was sputtering a primitive radio burst. Inside, the heartbeat of one living thing, a human pounded like a war drum in her ancient ears. Vaela had never encountered humans, only distant records of their noisy ascent from dirt to stars. Primitive, emotional, limited. But as the ship trembled toward her, bleeding oxygen and light, she felt something stir beneath the surface of her. Massive chest, a soft ache, old and unnamed. She moved for the first time in centuries, slowly stretching one limb the size of a small moon toward the drifting wreck. She did not understand why. She only knew it was alive, and it was afraid. Reached out not as a god, not as a beast, but as a mother once denied her child. The moment her luminous tendril brushed the hull, time seemed to bend. The human inside, beaten, unconscious, fading, flared like a star to her senses. She could feel the pain, the stubborn heartbeat that refused to die, the memory of home, encoded in fragile neural pulses, and something else: hope. Not for himself, for something he carried. For someone. The ship's data systems tried to interface, but her mind was too vast. So she listened directly, tapping into the electrical ghost of his thoughts. He had come here not by accident. He was running from war, from betrayal. And inside his body, held in suspension by ancient earth medicine, was something small and unborn. A child, not human, not mere. Something else. She had no word for the emotion that followed. It struck like gravity, endless and inescapable. A ship lost. A life clinging to the edge of death. A seed carried across galaxies in a man's burning chest, and her. The one who had been too big to bear life, too strange to be mother. She was about to change. Forever. The man awoke inside a dream that wasn't his. There was no ship anymore, no hard metal, no cold console beneath his bleeding palms. Only softness, warmth, and a pulsing rhythm like the breath of the world itself. For a moment, he thought he had died, and this was some afterlife Earth's religions had never imagined. But when he opened his eyes, really opened them, he saw not clouds or angels, but a living cathedral of light, curving, shifting flesh like translucent silk, glowing with stardust veins. He was lying within a chamber, formed from something alive, something enormous, yet not threatening. It was like being cradled inside a star that had grown a heart. His name was Elijah, and until moments ago, he had been preparing to die in the loneliest corner of the galaxy. His ship was beyond repair, his fuel gone, his bones cracked from the last impact. But now, against every known law, he was alive. And he was not alone. He tried to speak, but coughed blood instead. Then, impossibly, he heard a voice. Not in his ears, but inside his skull. A vibration that matched the rhythm of his heart, as though someone were humming in his very soul. You are safe, it said, soft, ancient, female. So vast it echoed like thunder, yet so intimate it brought tears. He sat up, weakly, glancing around. The walls of this place seemed to breathe with him, responding gently to his movement. Where am I? He managed to whisper. Silence answered, then a slow, pulsing glow. The voice returned, quieter now. You were within me. I caught you. You were falling. Elijah blinked, struggling to reconcile what he was hearing with the impossible. Truth caught him. What being could catch a falling ship and cradle it like a baby bird? He remembered Flash's alarms screaming, the hull cracking, fire licking at his skin, and then light. not the sterile light of human machines. A living light. You saved me, he said. It wasn't a question. It was a realization. He could feel the truth of it in every breath. Why? For a long moment, there was no reply. Then came a sigh, like gravity exhaling. Because you were alive, the voice said, and because you were small. That last word hung heavy with emotion, though Elijah didn't yet understand why. He rested a trembling hand on the fleshy wall beside him and felt a pulse slow, deep, motherly. He could not see her, not yet, not fully. She was too large, too vast to be comprehended all at once. But she had a name. He could feel it in his. Mind offered without language. Vaela. Elijah began to understand. She was not a ship. Not an AI. Not any kind of machine or tool. She was a being, sentient, biological, ancient, alone. Something bigger than any station or planet he'd visited. And she had chosen not to destroy him, not to ignore him, but to hold him. Slowly, painfully, he stood. There's nothing I need, he said, gasping for strength. Inside me a stasis pod. Please, it's not for me. A flicker of worry, his voice cracked. It's a child. Vaela didn't answer in words, but the chamber lit in softer hues. Gentle vibrations rippled under his feet, guiding him to where his emergency pod had been tucked inside his chest cavity, a tiny biocapsule, no bigger than a clenched fist, now extracted from his failing ship. She had not only saved him, she had preserved the precious cargo he carried. When he saw the pod resting on a bed of living tissue, humming gently, tears spilled down his face. You didn't even know what it was. But you protected it. I felt it, Vaela whispered. Inside him, it called to something I had lost. Something they said I could never feel again. Her voice shivered like starlight on water. I have no offspring. I was made too large, too strange. They cast me out before I could ever try. But this life you carry, I would keep it safe, if you allow me. Elijah fell to his knees. He had expected to die alone, his mission unfinished. He had not dared to hope, but this was something else. A miracle born not of gods, but of kindness. Then we're the same, he said, voice shaking. I was cast out too. Not because of what I did, but because of what I tried to save. A half-human child, my child. She wasn't born the way they wanted. Wrong mother, wrong blood. They didn't want her, so I ran. The chamber pulsed, not with pain, with understanding. And in that sacred, wordless moment, two souls broken by the cruelty of their own kinds reached out across the divide, not to demand, not to take, but to give. She had saved him without knowing his name, and now he offered her the one thing. She'd never been allowed, the chance to be something more than forgotten, a mother. Time became softer inside her, no longer measured by clocks or pulses of machinery, but by breath, by warmth, by the steady, healing rhythm of two beings who had lost everything and yet found each other. Elijah remained inside Vaela's protective chamber, floating in her atmosphere like a child in a womb. Days passed, or maybe weeks, but he no longer counted them. He spent his time tending to the stasis pod, cleaning the carbon buildup, recalibrating the nutrient balance, whispering words through the glass, even though the child inside could not hear. Vaela watched him, always watched, her consciousness draped around his fragile presence like a blanket made of starlight. She did not interfere. She understood the sacredness of what he did, even if she did not understand the languages he used. She only knew that every time he placed a hand on that pod, something inside her stirred, something old, aching, and bright. There were moments quiet, breathless moments when they spoke, not in words, but in impressions, emotional echoes. He would look up at her curved walls, softly glowing with her bioluminescence, and simply feel her asking, "What is she like?" And he would reply aloud or in his heart, "She's small, but strong, like her mother." Vaela never asked who the mother was, and Elijah never explained. Some pain did not need to be unwrapped to be shared. He had lost that woman in the escape, the price of rebellion, the price of love. She had died protecting the child, and Elijah had promised her with blood still wet on his hands that he would not let their daughter die in a lab, dissected, judged, erased. That promise had carried him across the stars, alone, broken, burning. Until Vaela. Sometimes Elijah would fall asleep pressed against her inner chamber wall, the stasis pod beside him, and Vaela would lull him into gentler dreams. Not illusions, she wasn't a manipulator, but memories offered back to him in the order his soul needed them. He saw again the face of his lover, the silver thread in her voice, the look she gave him the moment before she sailed the pod with their daughter inside. He saw the firestorm behind her, and how she did not scream as it took her, only smiled. And when he woke, tears still on his face. Vaela's voice would be there, wrapping around his thoughts like a lullaby. She was brave, she'd say. She lives in the child. Elijah began to speak to Vaela more directly, telling her things he hadn't told anyone in years. About Earth, about how humans never stopped fighting. How even as they reached the stars, they brought their walls, their bloodlines, their bureaucracies with them. Hybrids like his daughter were illegal in many systems, not because they were dangerous, but because they were unclassified, undefined, unwanted. They want us to be pure, he said once, his voice cracked with grief, but purity is just another word for fear. Vaela didn't respond with philosophy. She responded with presence. She thickened the atmosphere slightly when he needed more oxygen. She adjusted her inner glow to match his circadian rhythms. She used her immense network of living tissue to construct a nest around him in the pod, forming beds and sloped surfaces from her own cells, all without him asking. It was not servitude. It was understanding. And Elijah slowly began to understand. Her as well. How her people had feared her not because she was monstrous, but because she had outgrown their limits. Because she was a mirror of what they feared to become, too large, too emotional, too alive. One night, as Elijah sat tracing the arc of the child's silhouette inside the stasis pod, he said, "I think she'll love you. I think she know." Vaela responded not with words, but with a gentle shift beneath him, raising him slightly as if to lift him closer to her heart. "I can't be her only parent," he added softly. "She need more than me. She needs someone who remembers how to be soft in a cruel world. Someone who was told she couldn't be a mother but became one anyway." And in that moment, a ripple passed through Vaela's vast body. She felt it in her every limb, every cell. It was not just empathy now. It was not just kindness. It was love. Ancient and new, raw and glowing. The kind of love that could only be born between two creatures who had nothing left to give except each other. She would protect the child, not because she was a guardian. She would raise her not because it was owed. She would do it because, for the first time in her entire aching existence, someone had looked upon her and said, without fear or doubt, "You're enough." Asterisk, 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 the stillness shattered with a sound that wasn't sound at all, more a sensation like bones vibrating, like the distant scream of something terrible waking up. Elijah felt it first as a sudden spike of pressure behind his eyes, like a siren buried in his skull. He stumbled backward from the stasis pod, clutching his temples, his breath caught in his throat. Vaela reacted immediately, her body rippling. Around him, closing in, shielding. "What is it?" Elijah gasped. "What's happening?" Vaela didn't answer at first. She was listening, her senses stretching across parsecs, through radiation belts, into the electric web of distant frequencies. Then, slowly, she spoke not with certainty, but with dread. "They have found you." Elijah's heart dropped. "Who?" "Vaela." Pulse low and dim, a morning psalm vibrating through the floor. "Your kind," or something like them. Machines, large and many. Signals matching the markings from your damaged vessel. "I believe they have been following your trail. I believe they are coming for the child." For a long, terrible moment, Elijah stood frozen. His mouth opened, then closed again. There were no words that could hold the weight of this betrayal. "I thought I'd shaken them," he whispered. "I rooted through dark space, through the dead systems. I destroyed every beacon, every trace. They must have, but the truth was obvious now. They hadn't been tracking just his ship. They had been tracking the child. Or maybe even something deeper him. A transmitter he hadn't known was in his body, a molecular tag. "She's not just wanted," he muttered. "She's hunted." Vaela grew very still. Her walls tightened, her glow dimmed. "What will they do if they find you?" Elijah's voice broke. "They won't ask questions. They'll say it's a biological hazard, that I'm unstable, that the embryo must be contained. They'll take her pod, dissect it, strip her DNA down to patent numbers. That's what they always wanted." He turned to Vaela, eyes burning. "They didn't care about me. I was just a transport vessel, disposable. They wanted her." Silence spread like a bruise. Vaela did not ask what Elijah planned to do. She did not speak of escape. She only focused inward, her thoughts curling into her vast, aching memory. She remembered the exile, the committee of her own kind who had looked at her and decided she was too much, too big to belong, too complex to bear life. She remembered how she had begged to stay, to try to matter, and how they had turned away. Just as Elijah's kind had turned away from him. Not because he was evil. Because he had broken a rule by loving something different. Something they couldn't control. Elijah fell to his knees, the pressure in his chest too much. She deserves a chance. That's all I ever wanted. Just one chance. His voice cracked, not with weakness, but with rage. The helpless kind that only fathers understand, the kind that grows when you've run out of time, and the world is still coming with knives. I won't let them take her, he whispered. Not while I'm breathing. Vaela listened to his pain and let it move through her like electricity. But beneath it, something else had awakened. Not fear, not sorrow, instinct. The vast and terrible instinct of something that had been made to nurture, to protect, and had been denied its purpose for too long. She reached into her memory for knowledge of human systems, signals, ships. She traced the inbound trajectories, calculating the time. 5 days, no more. But it was not just the humans that worried her. No, there was something darker embedded. In the signal, a faint echo behind the primary band. A language she had not heard in 1,000 years, mere her own people. Their signature woven in like a ghost. They're coming too, Elijah muttered, catching the flicker of her realization through their bond. You're kind. Vaela responded with a voice no longer soft. They are not mine. Not anymore. And then came the final horror. As Vaela dug deeper into the intercepted signal, she saw something else, coordinates, not to her location, to a replication lab, blueprints, synthetic wombs. They weren't coming for the child to destroy her. They were coming to claim her, to copy her, to breed her into something useful. Elijah collapsed, his breath gone. They're going to make her into a weapon. Vaela surged with a fury so vast it shook her own gravity. For all her size, all her grace, all her loneliness, this was the line. She had not waited a millennium in exile to become a host for war. She had not given herself to Elijah and his daughter to become a machine of conquest. And in that moment, something shifted in her biology. A chemical chain that had long been dormant roared to life, an ancestral protocol triggered by maternal rage. She would not flee. She would not surrender, and she would not let them have the child. The void grew heavier each passing hour, as though space itself knew what approached and dared not breathe too loud. Vaela drifted through the dark with measured stillness, her body now a fortress as much as it was sanctuary. Inside her, Elijah paced in a circle, 10 steps forward, 10 steps back like a lion caught in a cage too small for its fury. He checked the stasis pod every hour, ran diagnostics he already knew by heart, tuned and retuned the failing human tech as if some forgotten subroutine might make a miracle bloom. But no code could outpace warships. No system could outwit a galaxy determined to erase what they could not define. He stood now in Vaela's central chamber, sweat dripping down his back, his eyes bloodshot. They're faster than I thought, he said, jaw clenched. 1 jump away, maybe 12 hours. And they've stopped encrypting their comms. They want me to know they're close. Vaela's voice flowed around him, both calm and tremulous. I have read their formation. 4 vessels, 2 human, 1 automated, 1 mirror. Elijah didn't respond at first. He simply walked to the edge of the chamber where the stasis pod glowed with a warm, humming pulse. He knelt and placed a hand on it, fingers trembling. She'd never survive in their labs, he whispered. Even if they don't kill her, they'll chain her to their experiments. They'll split her genes until there's nothing left of who she was supposed to be. Vaela felt his pain, but deeper than that, she felt her own. She had never seen this child, never touched her, but she had sung to her through Elijah's dreams. She had memorized the rhythm of her heart inside that pod. She had become, in the only way she knew how, a mother by proximity. A mother by choice. There is another way, she said quietly, carefully. Elijah turned, eyes narrowing. What do you mean? A low hum passed through her, a note of warning and hope bound together. I have not told you everything about what I am. There are chambers within me, old ones unused since before my exile. They were made not for gestation, but for integration. Not to birth children, but to merge minds. Elijah frowned, confused. What kind of merge? Vaela hesitated, not from uncertainty, but from reverence. A bond, one of thought and matter. It was rare. Forbiddance now. But once we could link our essence with another, wrapping them in ourselves so completely, they could not be extracted without death. I can do this. I can become her cradle and her sanctuary. If she grows within me, no one will ever be able to claim her without tearing me apart. I will be her sky, her blood, her world. He stood there, breath caught, chest rising and falling, like a tide too angry to stop. But she won't be human anymore. She won't be only human, Vaela corrected gently. She will be herself. She will be safe. But if we do that, Elijah's voice dropped. There's no turning back. Vaela answered with silence, the kind that says more than any word. He understood. She was offering not just protection, but a sacrifice. Her body would change forever. She would become something no longer mere, no longer alone, no longer cast out, but never accepted again. And he would lose the last piece of her that was still his. He fell to the floor, burying his face in his hands. Rage and grief twisted inside him like molten metal. I wanted to raise her, he said through broken breaths. Teach her. To read. To run. To fight. I wanted to see her choose who she would become. Vaela leaned her consciousness into him, folding gently around the rawness. You still can. She will know you. Through me, but not if you die. Not if they take her, and... Then Elijah understood the final price. He could stay, and they would come, and they would burn him alive to extract the girl. Or he could leave, draw them away, become the decoy, give Vaela the chance to merge with his daughter in peace. He could protect her the only way left, by vanishing into the fire so that she might grow in the light dot. It was the choice every parent fears, not between life and death, but between being there and making sure there's something left to return to. He rose slowly and touched the pod one. Last time. Then he looked up at the glowing walls around him, eyes hollow but blazing. I'll take the ship's lifeboat, activate the beacon, lead them into the outer field. It's an old asteroid belt, chaotic, dense. I can keep them busy long enough. For the merge. Vaela pulsed low, sorrow and pride flowing through her. I will guide the merge. And when she wakes, she will know your name. She will remember your voice, carved into the songs I sing her. Elijah placed his palm on her inner surface. Then promise me when she's ready, when it's safe, you'll show her the stars. I will show her everything, Vaela whispered. And I will call her daughter Dot as he turned and stepped into the narrow capsule, fire already rising in his veins. Elijah did not feel like a man dying. He felt like a man becoming legend. A man whose love was loud enough to echo across the cosmos. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The stars watched in silence as the human lifeboat screamed out of Vaela's orbit like a flare hurled by a god who refused to kneel. Elijah sat inside it, strapped into a seat barely meant for travel, his hands soaked in sweat, his knuckles white as he guided the tiny vessel into the asteroid belt that stretched like a crown of broken teeth around the dead moon of Caliph V. He didn't speak. He didn't pray. He only breathed, and out. One more moment. One more breath for her. Dot behind him. Vaela had already begun the merge. The chamber where the stasis pod lay was now wrapped in layers of living tissue, neural tendrils unfolding like petals in time-lapse bloom. Her body shifted inward, curling gently around the embryo as her ancient systems awakened genu-weaving channels, synaptic wefts that had not been touched in ages. Pain surged through her, ecstatic, primal pain. Not destruction, birth. For the first time, she was not a drifting exile. She was a cradle. The child was merging with her cells, protected by layers of memory and light, growing not in a womb of flesh, but in a sanctum of will. Vaela sang to her in frequencies only infants and stars could understand. And far ahead, the hunters arrived. The lead ship, a human war cruiser marked with the sigil of the Celestial Gene Authority, broke from hyperspace first, its engines still, glowing with fury. Behind it came the drone vessel, silent and angular, bristling with scanning arrays and surgical arms. Then, last of all, the mere ship emerged. Sleek, cruel, curved like a blade. A living vessel, but colder than Vaela had ever known. Its voice shivered through the field on a tight beam transmission. Vaela of the exiled. Line. You have something that does not belong to you. She did not answer. She didn't need to. Her silence was a blade of its own. Elijah's beacon activated, and all ships snapped their scanners toward his lifeboat. He swerved hard left, ducking behind a massive asteroid, engines burning hot and violent. The transmission flood began immediately. Elijah Graves, you are in possession of prohibited genetic material. You are ordered to stand down. You are harboring a biological weapon. You will not survive pursuit. He laughed, a short, breathless sound, not of madness, but defiance. You're wrong, he whispered, adjusting the trajectory. She's not a weapon. She's a child. She's mine. And then he punched through the debris field, dragging the pursuers behind him. The war cruiser gave chase, flanking with brutal precision, but the belt was too dense for its full maneuverability. The drone vessel followed, trailing sensor pings like breadcrumbs, but Elijah knew this place. He had mapped it weeks ago, long before the crash, desperate for places to hide. He ducked behind a hollow rock, killed his engines, and let them pass him. Then fired a burst of decoy flares and bolted in the opposite direction. The mere vessel did not follow Dot, it hovered in place. orbiting Vaela at a cold distance, its voice now directed to her and her alone. You are violating sacred law. Integration with alien species is prohibited. You endanger the purity of our future. Vaela stirred within herself, the child now fully enmeshed in her, protected at the root of her being. Her response was quiet, but it cracked the vacuum itself. Purity is the lie you told to mask your fear. I have seen the future you fear, and she is beautiful. A pause. You will be destroyed, the mirror replied. And with you, the experiment. But they had waited too long. Elijah had reached the final mark on his hidden, charred a gas pocket buried inside a magnetic field at the edge of the belt. It would ignite at the smallest energy discharge. He had saved one weapon, a core destabilizer. One shot, enough to light the sky. He pressed the manual detonation button and looked up, eyes glassy with salt. Vaela, he whispered, take her far. Take her where the stars still remember songs. I'll hold the fire for you. Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from unbearable love. I see you, Elijah Graves. In her eyes, she will carry your face. He smiled a little. Not because he had won, but because she understood. And we did it. And he fired. The blast was not light, it was a second sun, roaring to life inside the bones of a shattered belt. The cruisers flared, overloaded, shattered. The drone spun into molten slag. The wave hit the mirror ship like a divine scream, slamming it sideways into the dark, crippled but not dead. But Vaela was already gone, already folding through the void, dragging her mass into dark channels. Only she remembered, her body dimmed to shadow, her daughter wrapped inside her like the first dream of a new world. Behind her, the fire faded, silence returned, and one human's name burned itself into the memory of the stars. The stars were old when she first stirred again. Time had passed, not in days or years, but in epochs of silence and breath. Deep in a system uncharted and unnamed, Vaela floated in the cradle of a blue-white nebula, her great body curled around a small, glowing cocoon. She no longer bore the shape she once had. She had changed, reborn in the quiet aftermath of love and sacrifice. Her outer form had softened, compacted, reshaped by choice and purpose. She was no longer a wandering monolith of exile. She was a guardian, a mother, and a home. Inside her, life stirred. The girl was not quite mere and not quite human. Her skin shimmered faintly with bioluminescence, yet her breath carried rhythm, not vibration. She dreamed in color, but thought in sound. Her limbs were graceful, her heart wide. She had not been raised with fear or war or the codes of dying empires. She had been raised with Song Vaela's ancient lullabies woven into her neural growth. Her memory fused with stories of places she had never been but belonged to. She had never seen Earth. She had never known Elijah's face. And yet she knew him in her dreams. She stood beside a man who called her by name Elira, with tears in his eyes and a grin that cracked like sunlight. He whispered things she didn't understand, but felt with her whole being. Be better than us. Run when you must, but never run from love. Find someone to protect when you're strong. And every night, before the dream ended, she heard a final word soft, like breath fading from fire. Daughter. Vaela knew it was time. The merge had long since completed. Elira had grown not in haste, not in panic, but with patience. Now she, stretched within the inner sanctum, awake for the first time, blinking at the warm, golden walls around her. Where am I? She asked aloud, and Vaela, voice gentle as water flowing through light, answered, You are home. But who are you? There was a pause, a heartbeat long. Then the answer came, full and simple. I am your mother. The girl touched the wall, felt the living hum beneath her fingers. Is there more? Outside of this? Vaela responded by shifting her outer membranes, allowing the nebulous light to filter through the translucent panels of her chamber. A sea of stars stretched out like a story waiting to be told. There's everything, she said, and so they began. They traveled slow at first, through silent pockets of space, untouched by war or greed. Elira learned the languages of dying stars, the pulse of asteroids. Vaela taught her how to listen, not just with ears or instruments, but with the soul. She asked questions that only a child raised in peace could ask. Why do people fear what is different? What happens to love when someone dies? Will I always have two mothers if one of them never held me? To each, Vaela gave only honest answers, because fear was taught, not born, because love leaves echoes that grow louder with time, because a child made of two bloodlines will always carry both, even when one is memory. And one day, when Elira had grown tall and graceful, when she could guide Vaela through the cosmos as easily as tracing a storybook with her finger, she asked the final question. Is there anyone left? Who remembers my father? Vaela hesitated, then answered with action. She led her daughter to a system far beyond known space, a world of ruins and silence. There, embedded in the side of a scorched moon, was a relic. A piece of a human lifeboat, blackened, broken, but untouched by scavengers. Inside was a scorched message capsule, long inert, but intact. Vaela retrieved it with trembling limbs. She had never dared return. Until now, Alira opened it with fingers both human and not, and heard, for the first time, the voice that had shaped her existence. Elijah's voice. If you're hearing this, then we did it. Somehow you made it. You're safe. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to teach you how to run, or how to fight, or how to fall in love. But I'll tell you something better. You were worth everything, every step, every scar, every fire I flew into. You are not a mistake. You are. Not a weapon. You are the proof that we can be more. That love is bigger than fear. That we can make something new, something better from what we were too afraid to accept. You are my Alira, and you are free. She cried then, not from pain, but from wholeness. Vaela wrapped her gently in her light, and together, mother and daughter rose from that broken moon, leaving behind the ashes of cruelty, carrying with them the most dangerous thing the galaxy had ever known. Hope.